Hi everyone, my name is Danae and I'm going to be hosting today's live Q&A with Chris, our expert horticulturalist. So these live and Q&As are a place for you to bring all of your gardening questions, anything from I don't know what tree I want to plant to I'm having troubles with this type of plant, anything and everything. Bring it to us here, comment it below, and we are going to answer all of them. How are you doing today, Chris?
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Looking
excited
forward to it. Yeah.
excited to answer some questions?
Yeah, ready to
Awesome.
go.
All right, let's get into the first question that we have here. So, someone is wanting to plant some Juniperus Blue Arrow along their 6 meter long fence. How many 8-inch pot plants will they need to fill up that 6 meter fence?
Right, okay. Yeah, there's two ways you could go. One way, if you want to enjoy the shape of them along the fence, you plant 3 of them along the fence, and they'd be nicely spaced out. They'd never grow in together, and they're quite an elegant looking tree. So that would be an elegant, spacious planting if you did 3 of them. And then if you wanted to have just a wall of Blue Arrow and block the neighbours right out, you'd go for 7 of them.
Okay, and what if they were doing it with 12-inch pot plants instead of 8-inch?
I'd use the same number, and actually I'll just grab the 12-inch pot plant just here. That's what you get when you get a 12-inch. The 12-inch pots are quite substantial, but even the 8s are pretty substantial. The 8s are about nearly 3 foot tall but fairly skinny. The 12s are nearly 5 foot tall and quite thick and bushy.
Okay.
So that gives you an idea. So if you put the 12s in, you wouldn't use any more or any less, but what you'd do is you'd have a more instant result.
Okay, awesome. Then, moving on to our next question. Do we stock either Marjorie Palmer or Marjorie Fair roses or Marjorie daffodils? Do we stock any of those plants?
No. So it looks like you're looking for a gift or a memory for a Marjorie, and I don't know. What I'll do is I'll have a look amongst our various suppliers whether there's a camellia or any sort of thing with a Marjorie in it. Actually, there's a Marjorie Miller, I think, camellia. I wonder if Emily could Google and have a look at that.
Yeah. Do we want to? We can take a look on our website to see if we have that Marjorie camellia at all, but we don't have any of the fair roses, the daffodils, or the palmer, unfortunately.
Right. And it's quite a lovely camellia. It's a weeping or cascading camellia that's really, really quite lovely. And I think it's called Marjorie Miller.
Okay.
Or Marjorie Miller. I can't quite remember. But that's but we could. I'll have a look after the show and see if I can find anything with Marjorie in it. If you're looking for
Marge Miller?
Yeah, Marge Miller,
There you go.
which is just an abbreviation, I guess, of Marjorie. So Marge Miller.
We'll just see if we have it on our website. If we have it, if we stock that plant.
If we don't have it, we can easily obtain it. It's no problem.
Okay, perfect. There is that question answered. All right, moving on to the next question from Joe. So they were wanting to order the Magnolia White Caviar, but not sure how far apart they need to be planted to make a hedge. So let's answer that part of the question first, and then we'll move on to the rest of it. So how far apart should the Magnolia White Caviar be planted to make a hedge?
At a 1 metre spacing, you'll get a really thick intertwined hedge, and at say at a 1.2, you'll start to get the shape of the bush a little bit. And so I'd say 1 to 1.2. 1.2 if you want to see a bit of the roundness of the bush, and 1 if you just want a green wall covered in white flowers.
Okay, awesome. And then next question is, could they be trained as an Aspelia?
Do you know, what I would do is I would look at the fairy, because the fairy has a stronger, straighter leader through it, and I think that the white caviar doesn't have a good strong leader in it. It would be hard to get a nice tall strong trunk, and it doesn't have strong enough growth. So I think I very similar flower and fragrance is the fairy, but a much stronger, faster bush And if I was going to do that, I'd be certainly looking at the fairy for stronger growth.
Okay. And would you mind letting Joe know what the current height they are in the 10-inch pots? She's up in Rosebud and she wants to grab the exact amount because
Okay.
it's probably quite a long distance to
Yeah,
travel here.
we deliver down there for free once a week if you spend over $300. With the caviar, it would be a bit over 4 foot, and the fairy would be the same.
Okay, awesome.
Just a little bit over 4 foot, not much over 4 foot.
Yeah, perfect. All right, Joe, so there is all of that answered. And yeah, take a look at our delivery option because Rosebud is obviously quite far from Campbellfield where we're situated at. Next question is from Beth, asking, do we have any banana Cavendish plants and are we able to send them?
We could deliver them with our vans, and we found a small one, we could pop it in the post, and we've stopped stocking them in the store, but I could speak to our supplier and see if he's still got some. So I'll check with our supplier. We've only just recently stopped stocking them in the store because of the onset of winter.
Okay.
They don't look happy here in the winter.
Yeah, perfect. All right, here we got a question from Anna. When is the best time of year to prune Manchurian pear trees?
I think right now they've lost their leaves, and particularly if you want to do a bit of a hard prune, now would be the time to get into it. And they're quite a hardy tree that loves a good prune.
Awesome. And we got a question here from Daniel saying that they have quite a small garden and they're really wanting an option for screening with a narrow garden bed. What would you say are some good options there?
There's not many good options. In a small garden, there's 2 plants that I'd really tend to favour, and it doesn't even have to be a small sunny garden. It could be a little bit shady, and there's a fastigiate English box, sometimes called an emerald pillar, but it's basically an English box that grows tall and skinny. It grows it's like a pencil pine, but it's an English box, and it's where a pencil pine can get really quite large. It never really gets that big, and you can always contain it with trimming. And then there's a very interesting Japanese holly that's commonly called a sky pencil, and sky pencil's even skinnier than the English box, and in a very confined area you can still make quite a nice tall narrow screen. So sky pencil and fastigiate English box, or emerald pillar as it's sometimes called.
All right. And we got a question here asking about what are some of the best deciduous trees, as obviously we're coming into winter now, and people are obviously seeing that their winter gardens are getting a little bit more bare. So what would you say are your top 3 favourite deciduous trees?
Number 1, silver birch. I love silver birch, and silver birches work well in modest sized gardens, and they don't grow too big, but they still have a bit of height there, and they look great all year. White trunks white trunk all year round, green leaves in summer, golden cascading foliage in the autumn. Then second best would be a Japanese maple. I was shooting some video the other day of Japanese maples in autumn colour, and they're just not the expensive ones, but just your cheap basic Japanese maple. Very strong growers, very very hardy, fabulous autumn colour, but they're beautiful in spring and summer, and they have. If you just let them go without any training, you'll get a beautiful, elegant shape in the branches. And then, I guess, last of all, perhaps a forest pansy. And a forest pansy, beautiful blossom in spring, fabulous bright pink blossom in spring, then dark purple leaves emerging in pink blossom, looks absolutely fantastic. And then they sort of turn through reds and browns and various colours through the summer. And then as they go into autumn and before they drop, they do actually a kaleidoscope of colour. So you get every colour on the leaves. And so it's a really happening tree with an elegant shape, not too big. So all of those are trees that most people could fit into most gardens. So it's basically silver birch, Japanese maple, and forest pansy.
Incredible. I mean, a forest pansy is actually one of my favourite trees. They're very, very beautiful. Here we have a question from Timmy asking, what is the best flowers to add for winter colour?
Wow, look at this. I anticipated this. Look, I did a quick trip around it. This is a javelin deep purple, really lovely strong colour. And that's going to flower for months and months and months through the winter. And then look at these. These these are only going to do midwinter, but that's your Erica, and it's not a Scottish heather as you might think, but it's a Melanthra. It comes from Africa, and great for winter colour. Beautiful they sort of have a romance to them. But the other thing that's flowering beautifully at the moment is the mountain sandwort, which I don't have right here at the moment, but lovely white flowers on the mountain sandwort. And then what I look forward to, it's not very long, probably the end of June, beginning of July, and your flowering quince or Chenomalies, they come in whites and pinks and reds and oranges, and great bit of the first, you've gone, it's not long after you've gone through the longest day, and you're just getting that first little rising temperature, and you get your Chenomalies. So it's a sort of a great event in winter. It means that the spring isn't too far away. So there's some good ones.
Amazing. Yes, I don't think that winter means that nothing's flowering. Obviously, we believe spring is where everything comes into bloom, because that is obviously where most things are, but that doesn't mean that nothing flowers at any other time of the year. As you can see right here, we are currently going into winter, and look at all these gorgeous flowers. Next question is from Jonathan, asking, when is the best time to trim the neighbour's bighorn?
Okay, it's a strange time, but it's grand final time. Now, and you might think there's something to do with football or something, but what it is if you think back, often there'll be a couple of hot nights just before or just after the grand final, and it's a time when it swings from icy cold nights to warm nights, and that's when things start growing. So if you wanted to, and we've got my partner and I've got a neighbour's bighorn hedge out the back, and it was getting all scraggly and way too tall and everything like that, and you could see through it and see the neighbours through it. It was getting a bit thin in that. And what we did was we did it right at that time, and we cut the hedge down by 2/3, and by cutting it at that time, it starts shooting within a couple of weeks, and by Christmas you've just about got your hedge back with all fresh new growth. So but what happens if you sort of say you chopped hard into your neighbour's bighorn right now, the problem that you're going to do is that it's too cold for it to shoot back again. It's too cold to grow new leaves, so it's just going to sit there, and it can't soak up much of the winter sun. But if you do it at grand final day, they've soaked up all the winter sun, they've pulled it down inside them, and basically you chop them off and they explode back in the places where you want them to be. And really that applies to, that's my favourite pruning time for a lot of things. Like if I've got big pittosporums that are out of hand, or lots of different evergreens, even English box, let them photosynthesize for the winter, let them soak up that winter sun, and then hit them hard just when it's that time of year when plants can start shooting.
Perfect. Who would have thought grand final time? Here we've got a question from Stephen. So they want to come down and buy some Gymea lily. They are a stunning flower. And how do they go in a pot, or are they better in the ground?
There's two different Gymeas. One's called Palmerite, and the other one is called Excelsa. And if I was growing one in a pot, I would get the Palmerite. Now, what the Palmerite does is it doesn't grow the actual foliage and everything like that. It's still big, but it's not as big. It's got a wider leaf, and it's got a little curl in the leaf, so that the leaves are kind of frilly, and big wide leaf, thick leaf, leaves are frilly, plant is shorter, looks fabulous in a pot. And the Excelsa still looks good in a pot, but it once it gets going, it's that little bit too big, too many suckers, grows a bit too quickly. So if you want a big spectacle quickly out in the garden, you go Excelsa. But if you want something to last you in a pot, go for a Palmerite.
All right, awesome. Next question is from Rachel, asking, what's the best way to care for my roses during winter?
Well, what I'm inclined, a lot of people get in and prune them first thing, they prune them about now, and the problem with pruning them now is that you're stimulating them, and they seem to start growing straight away. I reckon the best thing to do with your roses is leave them alone through the winter. Maybe give them a terribly light prune if they've got a lot of scraggly dead flowers and leaves and things like that. But basically, I'd try and leave them alone, And then at the beginning of August, prune them hard, like if they're standard roses or even bush roses. What the idea is to prune them like a hand like this. So you want to prune them so that you get rid of the crisscrossy middle branches, and you just have them heading outwards like that, and prune them to outward facing buds like that. So you just sort of prune them basically like a hand and prune them back nice and hard. And in summer, after the flowers die and that, you just do very light prunes, but in winter you do a hard prune, and you're basically pruning like a hand, and you're pruning to outward buds so that they become outward and sort of extroverted rather than buds. You don't trim them to inward buds so they end up all sort of like all tied up on themselves.
All right, perfect.
And then basically a good spray right as you're heading into spring and they're leafing up. A good all-purpose rose spray, something that knocks out the fungus and knocks out the bugs and everything like that, just as they warm up and start to go into spring. And then spray them every couple of weeks. And if you get that very intense, warm, wet period, say in late October, spray. Really give them a good regular spray, and keep the Osmocote up to them as well. Like I'd start. At the time that first prune would be a good time to put a bit of Osmocote around them.
Awesome. We got another question here from Stephen, which I assume was is a follow-up on the question about Gymea lily, so not about roses. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen. Okay, maybe if you just want to quickly type in, Stephen, are you talking about roses there, or are you talking about another plant? He's just asking, is it important to cut them on an angle when pruning, or is that not really important?
I think it's better, but not really important. What's important is to look at which bud, like select a good strong bud and cut a reasonable distance above that bud. In fact, what it is, people say, can you talk to plants? Yes, you can talk to plants. Like if you've got a bud facing this way and you chop just above that bud, that plant's going to grow that way. So I kind of imagine when I'm pruning, I'm actually talking to the plant, because you're chopping it there and you're communicating, grow that way. And so you can talk to plants, and you can talk to plants quite effectively, particularly with a good pair of snippers.
Amazing. And yes, that was about roses that we were talking about, so perfect. All right, moving on to the next question is from Sarah. When does springtime officially begin in Melbourne? I know we do tend to love having the cold lag a little bit here.
Well, looking at it from a biological point of view, my spring begins, I think that when the flowering quince flowers, it's still not quite spring yet, but it's a herald of spring. And then I figure that spring is here when I see the plums blossom. So plums are really at the start, and once the plums start, everything starts to move. You get your magnolias moving. So biologically, I see and the plums that are most common around Melbourne are those purple, the ones that have the purple leaves in summer and the pale pink blossom in spring, and basically you don't notice them that much, but then it'll be sort of first or second week in August, you'll suddenly see them blossoming all over Melbourne, and then after that you'll see the magnolias, the big sort of tulip magnolias, the light pink ones will all come out just after that, and then basically everything comes after that.
Incredible. I'm already excited for it, and we're only just heading into winter now, unfortunately. So we have a question here from Wimple asking, what's a non-invasive fruit tree that I can plant here in Melbourne close to the house?
Interesting question. A little bit off beat, but I'm thinking the pineapple guava. They're a New Zealand native, and that's a bush that can be trimmed and controlled. It's an attractive bush. It's evergreen, and it's non-invasive.
Okay. Do you find that a lot of other fruit trees have invasive root systems?
Yes, a lot of them. I mean, if you go for dwarf forms of them, even if you go for, like not a semi-dwarf, but a real dwarf apple, or you go for dwarf ones, they'll be not too bad. But almost all of your fruit trees in their normal form, like plums, apricots, a whole lot, they're big, strong growing trees with plenty of root, plenty of stem,
Yeah. What would you say is like a safe distance to plant a fruit tree from a house?
You'd want to be 2 or 3 meters away.
Okay, so depending, Wimple, how much space you have, if you are really wanting a fruit tree still, consider planting it just a little bit further away, 2 to 3 meters. If not, go with what Chris was.
Go with a dwarf. A dwarf one will have a dwarf root system too. So you go with a dwarf, and then you can come in closer to the house, and you can go dwarf lemons, and there's all sorts of dwarf ones on the market now.
All right, perfect. Next question from Penny asking, are the ficus flash frost hardy?
It depends how bad the frost is. For instance, if you're worried about frost, you'll find that Ficus hilli is hardier than Ficus flash. But I notice in the next valley across from where our nursery is the Plenty Valley, and in a frosty year, I'll see frost damage on the ficus right down as far as Bulleen. So it sort of travels down that valley there from King Lake, and it travels right down there, and you'll see burnt tops on them. It won't kill them, but a Ficus hilli would be much frost hardier than a Ficus flash. But Ficus flash are hardy for moderate frost, so sort of -1, -2, and -2 you start to get a little bit of damage. But as the longer they're in that spot, the more frost hardy they become. So if you get through the first year or two in a moderate frost area, but say you were in Bendigo or Castlemaine or something like that, you might get away with a Ficus hilli, but you're going to find that you'll be in trouble almost every year with the tops on a Ficus flash. And a young Ficus flash could be killed to the ground.
Okay, great. We're going to circle back to Wimple. Don't worry, Ken, we are going to get to your question next. But just again, that was the question about the fruit trees.
Yeah.
Wimple wants to know, can we plant one now in this weather, or should they wait till spring to plant a fruit tree, or the option that you gave to them?
Melbourne is a place where you can plant almost anything you want 365 days a year. So now's a good time. It's particularly say if you go for a dwarf citrus, they're going to root and establish themselves right through the winter.
And we do actually have a really good sale on lemon trees at the moment.
Yeah.
Remind them what's going on at the moment, Chris.
Yeah, we've just had a fresh batch of dwarf citrus in. So there's heaps of dwarf citrus to choose from. Normally the hard thing is you go in, there's only one or two of this, that and the other. We've just had a whole big pallet, 100 odd dwarf citrus come in, almost every sort in the dwarf right at the moment.
And personally, my lemon trees are doing very, very well right now. We've got so many lemons, almost too many lemons to contend with actually. So definitely look into maybe planting a lemon tree. Next question is from Ken, asking how far should I plant crab apple trees from the house?
I reckon dwarf apple, a metre and a half. A normal apple for 3 metres.
Okay, great. And then our next question is from Ben, asking when does our bare-rooted stock come in?
First lot comes in this week, where we're still working with the growers. The growers really have only just started digging in the last week or so. But this week I'm hoping to get weeping cherries, and we'll be confirming all that with our text and information towards the end of the week. But the weather looks good this week, so there should be some birches, some maples, some weeping cherries, and some standard roses. And then over the next few weeks, you'll start over the next few weeks that range is going to increase and increase and increase until I'll be advertising everywhere. There's time to get bare rooted.
Awesome, yep. So get excited, it's coming soon. Another question here from Ken about that crab apple tree. Can I plant a crab apple tree on a west-facing sun side?
Yes, and the only thing is a lot of I've yet to see crab apples that have been planted on dwarf understocks. So a lot of your crab apples are planted on larger growing understocks, and so and the smallest crab apple, and one with perhaps the best blossom, is called Ioensis or Ioensis floriplena, and that's a beautiful big double pink, lovely sort of pastely one, and that would be a good one if you wanted something not too big. But otherwise, some of them grow quite large. Keep them out from the house a little bit.
Awesome. And next question is from Kamshan, asking how hard should you prune an ornamental grape back first year planted? How hard should you prune an ornamental grape? It's the first year that it's been planted for them.
Real hard. I once planted a whole vineyard and had to study up on how to prune them. And the problem is if you basically you prune them back to 2 buds on the new growth, and then you only just let 2 shoots grow. And the thing is that you might feel like pruning them more gently and having half a dozen new bud growths, but when you disperse the energy in that young plant to half a dozen, each shoot is weakened by sort of the dispersal of energy. So basically, I remember I had to prune thousands of them. I pruned them all back to two shoots.
Wow, okay, and that's just for that first year of planting?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. Next question is from Lama, asking, what are the best climber trees for a brick wall? Something non-invasive and grows fast. The area has part shade, part sun.
Right, gotcha. Best climber for brick walls, something like that. Now, if I wanted something to stick to the brick wall, and I wanted it not too invasive, and sort of at the slightly more invasive end, I'd be looking at Boston Ivy, and at the slightly less invasive end, and Boston Ivy, lovely and fast, very, very fast, has a luscious, exciting look to it. I love it. Beautiful red autumn colour, goes bare in the winter. Personally, I don't mind looking at those sort of brown canes without any leaves. But some people don't like that too much, but I'm just really telling you that. But fast, it's exciting, and not too invasive, easy to control. And then the other one, less invasive, but a little bit on the slower side, is your Ficus pumila. Now those two don't need any trellis or anything, so they'll just stick, you just plant them at the base of the wall, they'll stick and cover the whole wall. But if you were willing to put up a bit of trellis, and fast and not too invasive, I really like Lady Di. It has a lovely green tropical leaf, it's evergreen, beautiful white flowers for 5-6 months of the year, covered in, and never sort of absolutely covered in flowers, but sort of lovely, luscious green, almost tropical looking foliage with patches of white like that all through it. And being sort of, and then perhaps the next best one, if you're willing to put up a trellis, would be a Hardenbergia, and the Hardenbergia that I like most is called Happy Duo, and that's where they plant a blue one and a white one together in one pot. Now normally when you do 2 different climbers together, it's a disaster because one will swamp out the other one, you only end up with one colour. But for some strange reason, your blue and your white Hardenbergia seem to grow together really, really well, and years later you'll end up with this lovely big wall. And it'll be August, and it'll be absolutely dripping with beautiful wisteria-like hanging flowers, and they'll be perfectly mixed blue and white. So it's a great success in mixing the blue and the white.
That sounds incredible.
So Happy Wanderer and Lady Di, if you don't want to, if you don't mind putting up some trellis, but if you're too lazy to put up trellis, you just want to plant something up against the wall. Number 1 is Boston Ivy, number 2 is Ficus pumila.
Great, those all sound incredible options. So we are going to start wrapping up. If you have any last questions, please comment them below and we'll answer them. We do this live every Monday though, so if you didn't get a chance to ask anything or come across something in your garden in the following few days, just be sure to jump on next Monday, same time, 12 p.m. on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. We're on a lot of different platforms, so whichever one you like most, and then we can answer your question there. So if no one else, I'll just give a couple more moments for anyone who wants to get in some more questions. We got one here from Bill asking, what's a good tall and narrow screening option?
One that's kind of a little bit boring but very, very practical is your old Glauca pencil pine. Your Glauca pencil pine grows tall and narrow. A really old one can be as narrow as 90 centimetres in width. Now what's great about that, and I'll often recommend it particularly to older people, like older people have to start being careful about going up ladders and trimming things and stuff like that. And most things like say your weeping lily pilly, which is a great tall option, which you can trim and keep narrow. The beauty of your Glauca pencil pine is it'll grow up 8 or 9 metres tall, be no more than 90 centimetres or a metre wide once you get up high, and it's not going to upset the neighbours. You're not going to have to go up a ladder and prune it. So it's a really good tall, narrow option. But say, for instance, but it's not I guess it's not a sort of like a sexy kind of an option, like it's not wow, but it's very, very practical. They're cheap, they're fast, they're easy to grow. And say you wanted something really wow, I would look at something like a fastigiate hornbeam. So your fastigiate hornbeam, deciduous in the winter, but still very thickly branched and everything like that, but goes up lovely and tall and narrow, quite fast growing, easy to grow, nice and tough, doesn't mind a bit of a trim, and that would be kind of your more exciting option. And the Glauca pencil pine would be a very, very sensible and practical option.
Awesome. Well, we're going to bring our live Q&A to an end now. Thank you everyone for coming. You are our community of gardeners. If there is anyone, a friend, family, loved one that you think is struggling a bit with their garden, or is wanting to learn more about gardening, please do share this with us, with them. We'd love to have them join us and have them any of their questions. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye.